There is an image that stays in the memory of so many people. A late afternoon room, the light thin like mist falling through a window, tiny dust particles drifting slowly in the air, and in one small corner, a child sitting so still, it seems even its own breath is trying to shrink itself. A small hand rests on a knee, fingers gently tightening together, as if even the slightest movement might trouble someone. In that room, the ticking of a wall clock echoes steadily, yet there is no voice calling out, no glance turning back, not a single person asking, "Are you okay?" It is not a grand tragedy. There are no raised voices, no crashes, no tears. Just absence. Small, quiet, but fateful. A child lifts a drawing in the middle of dinner, but no one looks. A question is asked but falls into emptiness. A birthday passes like any ordinary day. Tiny, ordinary moments, yet repeated long enough to carve a crack in the heart. Maybe I don't matter that much. And from that moment, from something that seemed harmless, a silent process begins. The child learns to shrink itself, to become smaller, to disappear from the center of its own life. Not because it wants to, but because that fragile little soul cannot bear one more moment of reaching out with no hand reaching back. Some children grow up not on responded affection, but on the silence they are forced to adapt to. They learn to read adults' faces, to know when they're allowed to speak. They learn to smile at the right moment, so as not to bother anyone. They learn to hold back their excitement because no one answers it. And worst of all, they learn to doubt their own needs. If you were that child, you know how terrifying that feeling is. Today's story isn't only about being ignored. It is about how a child, in order to survive, trades the need to be seen for the need to be safe. It is about how a young brain programs itself to endure silence as something inevitable. And it is about how that past, though far away, still echoes through the relationships you have today. In the way you love, in the way you fear, in the way you retreat whenever you feel abandoned one more time. This is not a story about weakness. This is a story about an invisible wound, powerful enough to shape an entire life. And this is the quiet tragedy of so many adults today. The ignored child from long ago is still living inside them, waiting for someone, finally, to see it. There is something strange about children who grow up forgotten. Even if no one ever tells them that they don't matter, their bodies learn it quietly, as if the silence of adults could seep through their skin, slip into each breath, and become its own invisible language. People call this an internal abandonment schema, but to a child, it feels like a cold mist that surrounds them and never goes away. At first, it's only a moment, very small, very ordinary. A question that receives no answer. An adult's gaze that simply slides past. A drawing held up, only to be swallowed by empty space. But these tiny moments, when repeated enough times, begin stacking on one another like stones forming a foundation. And then one day, the child realizes it has built an entire house out of silence. Inside that house, the child learns to walk softly, not because anyone told them to, but because their body remembers how their footsteps never made anyone look up. They learn to whisper because they've long grown used to their voice never being loud enough for anyone to notice. They pull their emotions back in like someone grabbing a cloth the wind is trying to take, just to make sure no one feels bothered by their presence. That silence is not a personality. It is a reflex born when a heart is too small to bear one more moment of being ignored. And then something else happens just as quietly. The brain starts creating new pathways, like a forest carving out its own trail because the old one is too dark. Each time the child reaches out and no one takes their hand, the nervous system records it as a signal of danger. The heartbeat shifts, the breath tightens, the whole body falls into a state of reduced presence. One time, then another, then hundreds of times after. The body learns a shortcut. Don't wait anymore. Don't call anymore. Don't hope anymore. Not because the need is gone, but because the need has been forgotten too many times. And so, a new form of the child begins to appear. A child that adults often describe as very good, easy to raise, so well behaved. But no one sees that, beneath that gentle obedience, lives a storm that has been extinguished. Each time the child wants to speak, they first check the adult's expression. Each time they want to laugh loudly, they remember all the times their joy received no response. Each time they want to share something important, they ask themselves, will anyone listen? And that very question, repeated again and again, becomes a fixed whisper in their mind. It's better not to speak. There are no scoldings, no bruises, yet prolonged silence has a force rivaling any blow. It leaves no marks on the skin, only a fracture inside, where self-worth begins to leak away slowly, not painfully, but persistently. The child grows up with a familiar feeling. I must make myself small so I won't disappoint anyone. I must stay quiet so I won't bother anyone. I must be okay so I won't become a burden. And then, like a seed lying underground for too long, the belief, I am not worth caring about, begins to sprout. Strangely, the older the wound, the more elegantly it disguises itself. In adulthood, no one sees a forgotten child. They see someone self-sacrificing, endlessly patient, rarely complaining, easily understanding of others. No one realizes that behind this maturity is a body that once learned to survive by erasing itself. An adult who always appears not to need anyone is often a child who once needed so much and was never seen. And this is the deepest psychological mechanism of the ignored child. The silence of adults becomes the voice inside them. When no one answered them, they learned not to answer themselves. When no one asked how they felt, they stopped asking themselves what they needed. When no one saw them, they learned to walk past the mirror without daring to look into their own eyes. It is not the truth. It is only a reflex. But for a child, that reflex becomes the first definition of self-worth. And many years later, even as adults, that reflex continues to breathe inside them. Soft, but persistent. Quiet, but clinging. Like an underground stream that has never once dried up. There is a moment in the life of every ignored child that even they themselves do not recognize. A moment so small like the soft snap of a dry twig in the forest, barely audible. Yet it opens an entirely new path. It is the moment the child understands that their true emotions do not lead to connection, but only to silence. From that second on, something strange happens. They begin searching for another version of themselves to live in their place. A safer version. A more pleasant shape. A role that makes the world around them less uncomfortable. At first, the child only experiments like trying on a shirt that doesn't belong to them. A slightly forced smile, just to see if an adult responds. A silence held a bit longer, just to avoid drawing attention. A nod, when what they really wanted was to shake their head. And when they notice that these things do not upset anyone, that they do not push anyone away, they start wearing that shirt more often. Every day, every moment, until they forget it wasn't theirs to begin with. And so the first role is born, the good child. Not good because they are understanding, but good because they are too familiar with the feeling that they must not cause trouble. Good because the fear of being abandoned is stronger than the need to be themselves. Good as a way to survive in a family, in a classroom, in a world that feels too big, too loud, and too indifferent to a heart still so small. Then comes the second role, the quiet child. They are quiet not because they have nothing to say. They are quiet because after speaking so many times without being heard, they swallow their words before they even form. They hold their emotions like a dangerous secret, a joy unshared, a sadness unspoken, a question with no one to answer. And slowly, something frightening happens. When emotions have no way out, they begin losing their way in. The child doesn't just fall silent toward the outside world. They begin falling silent toward themselves. Then comes the third role, the invisible child. This is no longer a choice. It is the consequence. After shrinking themselves for so long, the child learns to walk without making a sound, to exist without taking up space, to be present so lightly that people can forget they are there. And strangely, It is then that they receive a distorted kind of feedback. When they don't cause trouble, adults feel at ease. When they don't ask for anything, adults feel relieved. When they are silent, adults imagine they have become independent. This is when the child misinterprets something dangerously, that to be accepted, they must disappear. And so the three masks stack on top of each other, blend together, then attach to the skin, until one day, when the child is a little older, they look into the mirror and see a face that is both familiar and foreign. They know it is them, yet they do not feel it is them. Because somewhere, their true feelings have been wrapped up, folded, and stored in a dark corner they no longer dare to enter. True joy has been dimmed, true sadness blurred, righteous anger strangled until its shape is no longer recognizable. Everything becomes a faint sound like waves crashing from afar, not loud enough for anyone to hear. What the child never realizes is that each of their roles carries a cry for help. The good child carries the plea to be acknowledged. The quiet child carries the plea to be heard. The invisible child carries the plea to be seen. But when no one understands that language, the child shifts into the final stage of adaptation: numbness. Not numb because they lack emotion, but numb because they have learned to believe their emotions have no value. And then this mechanism begins to seep into the body. When they want to cry, their tears flow inward. When they want to speak, their throat dries before the words take shape. When they want to object, their shoulders shrink as if apologizing for having a need. When they want to ask for something, they immediately feel wrong. All of it creates a strange dance. The more they want to live authentically, the more fearful they become. The more they want to be seen, the more they hide. The more they long for connection, the more unworthy they feel. This is how the self splits into two. A true self, full of colors, full of voice locked inside, and a survival self, thin, muted, pleasing, but unfamiliar, presented to the world. From there, the loop forms. You learn, you adapt, and you disappear. The tragedy is not that the child has to perform to survive. The tragedy is that they perform so well that even they forget where the role ends and where real life begins. There are moments when, looking at the journey of an ignored child, we cannot help but ask a question that seems simple. Why would a child choose to disappear from themselves? Why would they choose silence over voice? Why would they choose shrinking over opening? Why would they choose to play a foreign role instead of living in their original feelings? The answer never lies in conscious choice. It lies in something older, deeper, more primitive. The biological instinct to stay connected to the caregiver is stronger than any other instinct. A child may be hungry, cold, or hurt, but the one thing that sends their body into a state of high alert is not physical pain. It is the fear of being separated from the person they see as their source of life. Because in the mind of a child, love is not an emotion. Love is survival. A tender look is oxygen. A hug is water. A response is shelter. If those things disappear, the child's mind does not interpret it as "I'm being neglected," but as "I might not survive." And this is where the greatest tragedy of human psychology begins. To keep the bond, the child sacrifices their authenticity. In the early years, a child has only two primal needs: to be themselves and to belong to someone. But when these two needs collide, the body is forced to choose. And in that moment, the child does not choose to be themselves. They choose to belong. Not because they enjoy pretending, but because, in the instinct for survival, acceptance matters more than truth. Therefore, when true emotions do not bring connection, the child does not give up connection. They give up their true emotions. You can see this happening very early, very subtly, like a small shift in the eyes. One time the child excitedly shows something but no one looks. One time they are ignored while sad, and the sadness is pushed down. One time they are scolded for expressing anger, and the anger is hidden. Each time, the real emotion is pushed a little further into the dark. And from that darkness, a different self is born. A survival self. a self that knows which role leads to the least rejection. If identity is the first voice of the soul, then the moment the child chooses connection over truth is the moment that voice fractures into two. One half continues whispering what they truly feel. The other half learns to say what others want to hear. These two voices live inside one small body, creating an inner unrest that makes the child wonder why they feel tired, heavy, unsafe, even when nothing dangerous is happening. Over time, this trade-off ceases to be a temporary reflex. It becomes a philosophy of life, an unconscious philosophy, taught by no one, spoken by no one, but etched into every gesture. To be loved, you must be good. To be accepted, you must be silent. To stay, you must not disturb anyone. And when this philosophy becomes the foundation, the child gradually loses the ability to connect with themselves. They don't know what they truly want, because they are used to wanting what others want. They don't know what they truly feel, because all real feelings have been locked in a drawer they no longer dare to open. This is the greatest human paradox. When we trade our identity to preserve love, we slowly lose the capacity to feel that love. The more a child tries to fit in, the more alien they become to themselves. And when they grow up, they may become someone very likable, very pleasant, very okay. But deep inside, they feel an eerie emptiness, as if the connection they receive never truly touches them. Because how can anyone love your true self when you never dare to appear as your true self? No one sees the real child inside, because that child has turned themselves into a shadow just to stay. And that is when the greatest tragedy of psychology becomes a personal tragedy. What once saved the child performance, shrinking, silence now imprisons the adult. The survival mechanism becomes a cage. Pretending becomes identity. Being easy becomes the lock that seals off the door to true emotion. And in this contradiction, the adult carries the wound of the child they once were without knowing its name. They fear being abandoned, but they also fear being seen. They crave intimacy, but retreat whenever someone gets too close. They long to be loved, but feel undeserving the moment love is offered, all because they learned too early. To exist in the eyes of others, they must disappear in the eyes of themselves. But at this very point, another truth, soft as a breath, yet powerful as an awakening, begins to emerge from the darkness. No one can love you truly if you do not dare to appear truly. And what kept you safe as a child has become what keeps you lost as an adult. This is the beautiful and cruel paradox of the human psyche. What once saved us now traps us in our own shadow. And only when we see this with complete honesty will we realize the path home does not begin by trying to become better, but by daring to step out of the role that has followed us all our lives. There comes a moment in every person's life when everything they once hid begins to rise quietly, like fragments of memories forgotten for too long. They do not return with noise, but with a small stirring in the left side of the chest, a tightness in the throat, or an image passing by that suddenly makes you sad without knowing why. It is not an adult sadness. It is the breath of the child you once were. The child who still sits silently in one corner of your being, waiting to be seen, even just once. As we grow up, many people believe they have moved past it all. But the body does not forget. The emotions do not forget. The soul least of all. And so there are strange moments when you realize you carry reactions you cannot explain. Excessive alertness, excessive independence, excessive avoidance, excessive sensitivity to someone else's silence. We call these traits personality, but sometimes they are simply the echoes of a child who tried far too hard not to be left behind. You might not understand why you are always the strong one in every relationship, even though deep inside, there are days when all you want is for someone to hold you and say, "You don't have to be strong anymore." You might find it hard to trust people, not because they did anything wrong, but because your heart has grown so accustomed to abandonment that opening the door feels like stepping out into a cold night. You might be the one who listens, who understands, who is gentle, who's considerate. But when you're alone, you realize no one ever asks you, "Are you okay?" the very question you've been waiting for your whole life. You might feel like you always have to apologize for your own existence, as if simply feeling sad or tired means you are inconveniencing others. You might not dare to ask for anything, even the smallest things, because you learned too early that your needs were never anyone's priority. You might always try to keep the peace, smooth things over, put out every flame of conflict, because within you, the child once ignored still cries out. If something goes wrong, they will leave. You might not understand why someone's silence hurts you so much. You think you're too sensitive, but truly, you are recognizing something familiar. The same silence that once made you curl into yourself like a wet leaf in the rain. You might feel the need to be perfect, competent, kind, always okay, as if your worth only exists when you cause no trouble. You might spend your life terrified of being abandoned, yet equally terrified of anyone coming too close, because closeness was once the thing you longed for most, and also the thing that never arrived. You might care for everyone else, but when it comes to yourself, you feel clumsy, confused, and sometimes empty. You might, and in truth, you don't just might. You have, because otherwise, you wouldn't have found your way to this kind of story. There is a truth many adults do not want to admit. Inside every one of us is a child who was never asked how they felt. A child who waited and waited just to earn a single glance. A child who held up a colorful drawing, yet no one pulled them close to ask, "What did you draw?" A child who made themselves smaller in every way possible, and is still shrinking even now, long after they no longer need to. When memories surface, we do not remember only the events. We remember the feeling. We remember how that tiny heart beat faster when it realized it was being overlooked. We remember how that little hand trembled when it reached out, then pulled back. We remember how quickly it learned to say, "I'm fine." Too soon, too quickly, too many times. Until "I'm fine" became a suit of armor. People say, time heals. But time cannot heal what we have never named. A wound buried too deep does not disappear just because we refuse to look at it. It stays there quiet, patient, persistent, waiting for the day we feel safe enough to return to it. And right now, when these fragments begin to reappear like faint beams of light, your body is whispering, it's time to stop. It's time to look at the child you abandoned along with everyone else. It's time to let them speak, let them cry, let them be angry, let them breathe. It's time for them to appear without having to ask permission. No healing journey begins with changing yourself. Every journey begins with going back. Back to the child who once reached out in a silent room. Back to the eyes once shining with hope before dimming from neglect. Back to the small heart that once beat with trust before learning to beat quietly so it wouldn't be heard. The truth is, the adult you are today may endure a great deal, strong enough to make others believe you're unbreakable, but the child inside cannot. It is still soft. It still longs. It still waits. And it is still looking up, hoping that someday the adult it became will return and say the words no one ever said. "I see you. I hear you. I'm here. I won't leave you again." And sometimes, just that is enough to melt a lifetime of silence. There comes a point in every person's life when all the things they once hid begin to rise quietly, like fragments of old memories left untouched for too long. They do not surface with noise, but with a soft stirring in the chest, a tightness in the throat, or an image that flashes by and leaves you wondering why you suddenly feel so sad. It is not the sadness of an adult. It is the breath of the child you once were, the child who has always sat silently in a corner within you, still waiting for someone to notice it, even just once. As we grow up, many people believe they have already overcome everything, but the body does not forget. The emotions do not forget, the soul least of all. And so, there are strange, inexplicable moments when you realize you carry reactions you cannot fully explain. Excessive vigilance, excessive independence, excessive avoidance, excessive sensitivity to the silence of others. We call these traits personality, but sometimes They are simply the echoes of a child who tried far too hard not to be left behind. Healing does not begin with an answer. It begins the moment the question arises, the moment you ask, "How do I heal?" Because the very appearance of that question means something in you has already shifted. A wound only begins to heal when it is seen, not when it is patched over. And that is the subtle distinction between healing and fixing. Fixing is trying to force something back into its previous shape. Healing is different. Healing is allowing what was once abandoned to exist without judgment, without rushing, without insisting that it disappear. Healing is not making the wound vanish. Healing is looking directly at it and saying, "I know you're there." We live in a world addicted to fixing. When something hurts, we want it gone. When something breaks, we replace it. When the heart feels heavy, we search for a quick answer. But the things of the soul do not obey the speed of logic. A pain that has stayed silent for years cannot be undone with a few positive affirmations. It needs something else. Witnessing, presence, a kind gaze, a safe space for it to speak for the first time. Shadow work begins exactly here, in the moment you are willing to sit down and listen inward, even when that is sometimes more frightening than anything in the world. Because when you look into the darkness, you do not only see what you fear, you see yourself. The part of you that was hidden for so long it feels unfamiliar. The part that was rejected, forgotten, or forced into silence so others could stay comfortable. The shadow is not your dark side. It is the part of you that has not yet been loved. In the quiet, when you close your eyes and place your hand on your chest, you may feel something very small, like a faint shift. That is where the shadow begins to whisper. It says it is tired. It says it is lonely. It says it no longer wants to pretend to be strong. It says it has waited for you for so long. And if you are brave enough not to look away, you will see the child you once were appear more clearly than ever, with small hands, fragile eyes, and the shy presence of a soul that was overlooked too many times. And here, a transformative moment happens. You no longer try to fix that child. You no longer force it to be cheerful. You no longer say, "It's fine, that's all in the past." You don't put tape over the pain. You don't paint over the cracks. Instead, you do something no one ever did for that child. You kneel down with full presence. I see you. I hear you. I am here. And the miracle is this. Sometimes, that alone softens the darkness. Shadow work is not confronting the dark part of yourself to defeat it. It is stepping into the dark to embrace the child who was left there. The emotions you once suppressed, anger, sadness, loneliness, hurt, are not enemies. They are simply the voices of years in which you were not allowed to feel. When you stop running from them, they stop chasing you. When you stop suppressing them, they stop erupting in moments beyond your control. When you listen to them, you begin to understand your own language. And then, at a deeper level, you realize something few people say out loud. Transformation does not happen in the moments you are strong. It happens in the moments you allow yourself to be soft. In the trembling moments, in the moments when you drop the mask of "I'm fine" and return to the tenderest, truest, most vulnerable part of yourself. Sometimes, shadow work is simply letting yourself cry. For the times you weren't allowed to cry as a child. Letting yourself feel anger. For the times you were too afraid to be angry. Letting yourself say, "This hurts." A sentence that should have been spoken years ago. Letting yourself touch the emptiness and whisper, "You've been alone for too long." Healing is not a straight line. It is a gentle spiral, circling again and again around a single center, returning. Each time you touch a layer of your shadow, you see more clearly. The child does not need you to be perfect. It only needs you to stay, not to run, not to judge, not to demand that it grow up instantly. It needs you the way you once needed the adults in your life. A person who stays. And when you learn to stay with yourself, the darkness is no longer frightening. It becomes the room where the child is waiting for you to open the door. The chair where you can sit and breathe. the space where you rediscover your truth. You do not fix that child. You do not fix the past. You simply open your heart and allow everything to exist exactly as it is. And that is the quiet magic of healing. Not loud, not dramatic, yet more enduring and honest than anything else. Because in the end, transformation is not becoming someone new. Transformation is returning to the person you have always been. The one the darkness once hid. The one silence once swallowed. The one the child in you sacrificed to survive. Shadow work carries only one invitation. Come home. And in each slow breath, you will realize that what you have been searching for all your life was never perfection, but the gentle, whole, unguarded return to yourself, so tender that even the darkness bows. When a child who was once ignored grows up, they do not step into adulthood with empty hands. They carry old reflexes, old patterns, old defenses forged in silence. These do not disappear as the body grows. They only change shape, blending into habits, attaching themselves to relationships, weaving into every decision until one day, the adult suddenly realizes they are behaving in ways they themselves cannot fully explain. If you look closely, you will see the child from long ago is still there, speaking through adult behavior. It speaks through soft boundaries, unbalanced relationships, nights spent lying awake with the feeling of, I'm not enough. The body has grown, but the emotions remain frozen at childhood. Such an adult may become someone who always gives more than they receive. Not because they are unconditionally generous, but because deep inside, they fear that if they stop, if they don't try a little harder, the other person will step back. Just like their parents once didn't turn around when they needed to be seen. They hold on to everything through excessive kindness, excessive patience, excessive sacrifice. Things that sound noble, but are in truth the silent bargaining of a child who once wasn't important enough for anyone to stay. Or they may become overly independent, so much so that even they feel like an island no one can touch. They handle everything alone, carry everything alone, reassure themselves, I'm fine. But what they fear most is not asking for help. It is being rejected one more time. They fear the feeling of a hand reaching out and finding only empty air. They fear a simple, I'm busy, that echoes the old silence. And so they push everyone away, just to avoid reliving the pain that once made them shrink into a tiny speck in the room of their childhood. They may become overly attuned to the emotions of others, yet blind to their own. When others are sad, they understand. When others are afraid, they notice. When others need something, they respond. But when they themselves are hurting, they cannot find the words. This is not numbness. It is the result of years spent without anyone ever asking, how do you feel? Their soul learned to turn pain into silence. And now silence has become the first reflex whenever their heart cracks. Or they become someone who always lets others cross their boundaries. Not because they are weak, but because they don't know where the boundaries are. No one taught them that their needs matter. No one gave them the right to say no. No one told them they deserve respect. And so in love, in friendship, at work, they let others take more than they can give. Because deep inside, they believe they have too little worth to set terms. Some adults fall into the opposite pattern. They become cold, guarded, always ready to leave before being left. They enter every relationship with one foot in and one foot out, always prepared. They think they are detached, but truly, they are imprisoning themselves in the survival shell that once saved them as a child, but now leaves them unbearably lonely. And then there are adults who become frightened by the silence of others. Just one unanswered text, one distracted glance, one brief pause, is enough to pull them back into old fear. It sounds irrational, but emotions cannot distinguish the past from the present. A moment of silence now can open the door to the whole room of childhood silence. All of this, the excessive sacrifice, excessive independence, fear of rejection, blurred personal emotions, sensitivity to silence, avoidance of intimacy, exhausting self-compromise. They are not personality traits. They are survival patterns. The language of the inner child. The strategies that once kept you from breaking in an environment that never knew how to see you. But when carried into adulthood, they become the very things that keep you from touching real happiness. And if there is one sentence that illuminates all of this, it is this: you are not wrong. You are simply continuing to survive in a world where you have long been safe. When you understand that, self-blame begins to dissolve. Shame begins to soften. Fatigue begins to have a name. And a new truth emerges, light but profound. What once saved you as a child is no longer necessary. You are no longer the child holding up a drawing at a crowded dinner table, hoping for one pair of eyes to turn toward you. You are no longer the child who swallowed their tears to keep someone from leaving. You no longer have to disappear in order to be loved. From that awareness, a new way of relating to yourself begins. Not fighting the old patterns, not forcing yourself to change overnight, but placing a gentle hand on your chest and asking the question no one asked you back then: what do you truly need? When you begin asking that, the old patterns no longer control you. They become only echoes, small, distant, and no longer steering your life. You learn to say no when you're tired. You learn to receive without feeling selfish. You learn to let others care for you. You learn to breathe in silence without fear. You learn not to quit before someone has a chance to love you. You learn not to leave when there is no need to leave. You learn to look at your reactions, not to judge them, but to understand them. Because in the end, true maturity is not outgrowing the inner child. True maturity is becoming the person that child can finally trust. There is a truth each of us must face at some point in life. No one can go back to childhood and change what happened. No one can rewrite the moment a parent didn't look up from the dinner table. No one can fill the gap left by unanswered questions. No one can replace the silence with a timely embrace. And no one can give that child a different childhood. What has passed will always remain what has passed. But there is another truth, warm, gentle, and just as profound. Your childhood may not have chosen you, but your future can. You are no longer trapped inside the survival version of yourself. You no longer have to play the obedient role to keep someone from leaving. You no longer have to shrink yourself to avoid being ignored. You no longer have to trade authenticity for safety. And you no longer have to wait for someone else to come back and see you. From this moment on, you can be the one who sees yourself. The voice of the inner child may have once been swallowed by silence, but you weren't. You can speak for it. You can hold it. You can tell it. You are not invisible. A simple sentence, yet powerful enough to crack open a lifetime of believing you didn't matter. Perhaps for the first time, you realize this. Healing isn't about running faster, pushing harder, or becoming a perfect version of yourself. Healing doesn't ask you to be better. Healing only asks you to stay. Stay with the emotions that seem ugly. Stay with the sadness that has lasted for years. Stay with the child who tried too hard, for too long, in solitude. And when you stay, the darkness begins to change color. It is no longer as frightening. It becomes a place where you can sit, breathe, and hear your own heart for the first time in many silent years. In the moment you pause, you see something you never dared believe before. You are not broken, not defective, not weak. You are simply someone who had to live without anyone looking long enough to understand. And now, you are doing what no one ever did for you. You are looking at yourself. The road ahead will still have difficult days. There will be moments when old patterns return, trying to pull you back into familiar reactions. Stepping away when loved, bracing yourself when needing help, holding your breath when someone goes quiet. But unlike before, this time you have a choice. You can pause. You can place your hand on your heart. You can whisper, "This isn't my fault. This is just a memory speaking." And within that awareness, freedom begins to grow. In the end, we understand this. Maturity is not walking past the inner child. Maturity is learning to take its hand whenever it trembles. Not pushing it away, but letting it lean on your shoulder. Not forcing it to be silent, but listening to the stories it never got to tell. That is the moment the circle closes. That is the moment old wounds find a home. That is the moment yesterday's silence is answered by today's gentle presence. And perhaps the most beautiful paradox of this entire journey lies in one sentence. You never had the childhood you deserved, but you still have a future, and that future is yours. No one can take it from you. No one can decide it for you. No one can blur your shape anymore. You were once forgotten, but now, you are learning to see yourself. And sometimes, just that alone is enough to rebirth an entire life.